Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Kirkpatrick.
And my name is Ty Whitman.
And we're the hosts of the Beyond the Narthex podcast.
A show where we sit down with members of CK Press and go beyond our narthex and take a deeper dive into the lives of our church family.
Our hope is that each episode will cultivate and encourage new conversations for you, our listeners, with our guests.
Enjoy the episode. Well, yeah, so we are here with Justin Sharrett, one of our you're once an elder, always an elder.
Yes.
A former ruling elder, and so yeah, Justin, it's good to be with you. Why don't you start off by sharing a fun fact or something that maybe somebody in the church might not know about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and the one I usually go with is I did a photo a day challenge for a whole year, but then extended it to be 2.5 years, so I had 1,000 photos.
What?
That's
impressive.
My sort of overarching theme of that is I don't like to give up on things. I like to keep going even when it's maybe not the best idea. A good example of that is I don't have any depth perception really. Things get bigger, they don't get closer for me.
Interesting.
And as a kid, I was like, I gotta be good at baseball, especially pitching. And so I would just practice for hours and hours and still could never catch a fly ball to save my life. But I taught my arm how to do the motion of pitching.
Yes, yeah. That's good.
But yes, that kind of I am, I will go all in on things and want to do it to the best of my abilities and not give up, even sometimes not a good idea, but...
So you're a complete finisher.
Yes.
Okay, a task is given to you and you will see it through.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. But to your own fault, huh?
Sometimes.
Oh, man. Okay.
How long did you play baseball?
Through junior high.
Okay.
And then I transitioned to more swimming and things where it is much less important to see how far away objects are.
Just the wall.
Just the wall. Yeah, I did not do backstroke really because that was the one where you do have to turn and not hit your head.
I always had trouble with that. Did you swim all throughout high school then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I basically lived at the pool because I was also a lifeguard, so I would just kind of spend all of my non-school hours there.
The true water boy,
Yes.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's discipline though. I feel like, oh man, waking up that early. You probably practiced in the mornings, right?
Yes, in the winter months it was, except for crossing from the high school to the pool, which was a separate building, no daylight hours.
Oh my gosh. I always remember hearing stories at Whitworth of the swimmers in the early mornings in winter where they would get frost in their nose hairs. And it'd be so, if you're
I don't know if I had that exact thing happen to me, but yes, the up in the morning, you're still damp because you're just always damp, and then you gotta go to school, so.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny.
I know.
I wouldn't have thought about that.
Funny and what an environment to live in. Just you're living and breathing the pool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It turned out to be great for having an infant because I was used to just cleaning up the locker rooms after disgusting boys after a lifeguarding session because that was the last thing you had to do before you left was make sure the locker rooms were cleaned out. So.
Oh, good. So life with a baby has taught you or has reminded you. Okay.
Yes.
That's funny.
I like that parallel.
Yeah, that's great.
Good. Yeah, well, people probably already know this, but you are married to our children's director here.
Yes.
And so, people probably see you around with cameras all the time, VBS, lots of skits. We might see a recurring character here or there from that Justin plays, so that's always fun. But, yeah, so your involvement with the church, what has that been like for you? And just having, being a ministry family, through and through, and then also having a kid who's, part of that. He basically, Ty hangs with them all the time, too, huh?
Oh, yeah, he's a church baby.
He's a church baby, yeah. Yeah, and just so lovable, too. He seems pretty chill about it. Yeah. Yeah, but all your involvement, with that, you just take it in stride, so has it been pretty fun to just ease into that voluntold position, as Danny would put it, right?
Yes, exactly. It's actually... really nice because I just kind of get to fill in whatever gaps that she has as opposed to having to be but the church I grew up in, and then like helped with their youth group when I was in my 20s. I was that in charge of like planning all the things and stuff, and I did that as an elder. But then for my like regular day-to-day voluntolding, I don't have to do those plans. I just can fill in wherever. And Danny's a nice person to fill in for because she's very detail oriented. So there's not a lot of like, oh, this huge ball dropped and now I have to pick it up and run with it. So it's mostly just like fun things or being basically a lifeguard for kids during kids club.
Lots of water things. It's very true. Yeah. Well, you guys make a great team.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're able to see it as like this is your service to the church rather than just I'm helping out my wife? Are you able to kind of distinguish? Or I mean, it's cool if those blend too, because I'm sure Grace and you probably both feel the same way. Like, I'm serving my church, but I'm also helping out my spouse.
Yeah, so. At least with the kids stuff, it's really easy because you see the kids like enjoying it and learning about Jesus and things, and it's very easy for that to feel like actual ministry and not just like assisting my spouse with whatever her job is. Even though I do have to explain that to my coworkers sometimes, like, no, I have to go help my wife with her job at something, which is a weird thing to say.
Now, the other question I've been thinking about is, I think one of your spiritual gifts, and maybe you agree with this or not, I don't know, is being able to teach kids. I think, like, every time you do a children's message, I go...
Mr. Waffles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I go, I should never do another one. Like, why doesn't Justin do all of them? Like, Danny can do one at the beginning of the month and set up the month, and then Justin can just do the rest.
Always Justin.
Because you capture them well, but you also really are able to distill these kind of sometimes really lofty ideas that are the main message into a really succinct point that they can understand. So I don't know, like, do you feel like you've always kind of had that ability, or is that something that you've grown into, or?
I at some point grew into it. I don't know that it was like a natural gift that I had, but back to the water theme, teaching swim lessons is what I did a lot of. So it was like teaching kids since I was 15 or whatever, and that's around the time I started helping out with Sunday school at the church I grew up in, and then doing the youth group stuff in my 20s. Like, so it's kind of been always something with kids, basically my whole life since I was a 15-year-old or so, whenever I started that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like as a 15-year-old to start that, and it's just it just becomes this constant. It's kind of where your life is bent towards.
It was never like I'm gonna go into teaching or anything, but it was always a like, this is just something that I do, and I'm good at it, I guess. At least enough as a volunteer to and I enjoy it, so.
Well, and is there something, I mean, was there a relationship, a mentor, mentee relationship for you that was pretty formative as well, or it's just this kind of was this God-given opportunity that presented itself?
Weirdly, the like best mentor I had was in the like swim lesson space, as opposed to like actual Sunday school or anything church related. It was I forget what her title was, but she was a woman who had been at the pool working forever, assistant manager or something, but it was like, you have to get down on the kids level, you have to be there with them. You can't just stand and hover above them and, be a big imposing teenager or whatever. So it was like, you just always get down at their level, which for me meant like standing on my knees on the like rough pool bottom, having what I called starfish knees, which that was the level of class for toddlers. Was the starfish level. So I would teach starfish and be down there, and my knees would be all ripped up by the end. But it was like, that was just what you did to get down there and make it known to the kids that you cared about them and like how to get through to them. And so that was just everything kind of came from that basic idea of getting down at their level. How do you communicate with them in a way that they understand, and meeting them where they are at 3'6" or whatever.
Gosh, in water, it amazes me. I mean, people feel so vulnerable around it. Of course, if you don't know how to swim, but then, like, Leaf, he still is adjusting. I mean, bath time can, I don't know how Griffin is. Bath time can, he does not like water on his face. And so when he's in the pool, it's, like, very careful that he's not getting wet in certain spots. But then when they're brave enough to get wet, it's, like, a huge deal. I mean, so, yeah, that role to be the teacher among the water, like... Yeah, it's not to be taken lightly. It's very vulnerable for them.
Yeah, it's very, because there are the two extremes. There are the Leafs who are, cautious and not sure about it, and then there are the Griffins who are going to dive face first into something that they can't swim in.
Oh.
So,
the Griffins.
Yes, those are the two extremes, and it was a lot of times managing both at once. Like, I would have one or two screaming children on my hip that I was helping, carry around as I chased down and grabbed a rogue child who had decided to go out to sea.
Wow. That's different caretaking right there.
Yes.
Oh, that's exciting.
Do you align more so on one side? Not just with water, but just in general. Are you more cautious, or are you more... I mean, I feel like I know the answer, but are you more reserved and kind of... planned when you're going to do something that
might... with water specifically?
No, just with anything.
Oh, with anything.
No, I'm the opposite of... My water answer is like, no, I dive right in. But for everything else, much more reserved. I like to calculate and think and try and plan through what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. There are certain instances where I don't do that, and sometimes it's great. Like, some of my best children's messages were like, I have the basic idea, and I have my stuffed animal waffles, and we're going to go up there, and it turns out amazing. But usually much more on the planning, reserved side.
Is that for, I mean, you've just found in life, is that just kind of, it's comforting to be able to plan? And
yes.
Yeah, I mean, that resonates with me too. I don't challenge that. I understand that, but
Yeah, there, I think in a lot of situations, it's just easier for me to, like, okay, think through what I sort of, at least overall, am going to approach a problem from. Because if I jump right into it, I can bring it back to the obsessing about being able to play baseball. I can just go down a wrong path, like playing baseball for 10 years instead of swimming. But if I stop and think about what am I good at, what do I like the most...
Yeah.
Swimming.
You said that word obsessing, and at one point, conversation months back, you had mentioned that you, as a kid, were very fascinated with different hobbies. I don't know if you want to speak to that now as we're talking, but like you would get fully in depth. I mean, you'd start a hobby and you'd see it through, like you said, complete finish. What were those hobbies, interests? How would you define that? Were they hobbies or more so?
Mostly interests.
Yeah.
The baseball thing was around the time I was just super into the Mariners and baseball statistics. So, like, I knew the entire Mariners lineup and all of their up-to-date stats. Like, I would read the newspaper every morning so that I would know what Edgar Martinez's batting average was, how many home runs Ken Griffey had.
Lineup? Yes. You could recall that.
Yes. Oh. And so it was, great to be in a grocery store and, someone is talking about, oh yeah, Bobby Allen blew this game. And I'm like, I know, he has so many missed saves. And I would, say these statistics and they would look at me and I was like, you're 6 and you're like the ESPN ticker line at the bottom of Sports Center. Like,
they're like, should we engage?
Yeah, they're like, I don't know. This is well before the internet was around a lot, so it was like it was a literal printed newspaper that I would get this information from every day, and like that was how I knew all of it. The other thing from around that time was dinosaurs, which is a more common kid obsession. But yes, being able to name all of the dinosaurs and various facts and what. Different periods they were from in the dinosaur
the periods
times.
is a different level of fact, for sure. I mean, does that knowledge still come to the surface?
That does not, no, and I can no longer recall all of the Mariners.
Dang. That would be impressive. Yes. But still, at that time,
Yeah. Do you find yourself doing that now? Like, I have a friend who he's explained it to me is like he got really into working out recently, and I was like, there's no way this lasts for 3 months. Like he's like, he got really into it and like started doing all this stuff, and then he was like, I'm done. He did the same thing with like he thought about ministry, and he was a youth director for like 7 months, and then he was like, nah, I can't, this is not for me.
He's finding what works, huh?
Yeah. But then he's found the thing that is for him, and so he's wants to be a sommelier, so like a wine connoisseur, and he spent like the last year and a half now doing that, so he knows that that's his thing. Like, do you still kind of find yourself having these interests peaked where you're like, okay, I'm going to spend more time than I should?
Not exactly church appropriate, but I could tell you at one point, and still some, all of the things about Westeros and the Game of Thrones families.
Oh, okay.
All of their different lineages and how they interact and things.
Hey, there's groups that will glob onto that. You can talk about that here.
No, exactly. That's why I purposely didn't wear a shirt for Game of Thrones to this, but a lot of my graphic tees are Game of Thrones, so that people know, or at least when it was more popular, that
it's like an invitation. Let's talk about it.
Yes, you can come up and talk to me about this.
That's smart. Yeah, the signal.
Yes, exactly. It's like, it's okay. This is a safe space for you to geek out about this fantasy world.
Well, and it's amazing how many people too. Like, I'm thinking of a couple at church too, where they're really invested, and I did it start with the books for you? I have no knowledge of it.
It did, asking, weirdly, I was just about finishing up one fantasy series, and my cousin's boyfriend was like, you gotta read this series, and he's long gone, but yet my love of Game of Thrones that came from that one random conversation at like Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever it was has remained.
The fire is strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's you're Ben Wyatt.
Yes, very. In many ways, including marrying
That's Parks and
Leslie
Rec, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, I know that reference. Okay.
Well, he's got that line where he goes, and you could never cancel Game of Thrones. It's unending.
It lives on.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can get to the other thing that we kind of planned on talking about, but I'm really curious with two planners in the room.
You wouldn't say you're.
I think I try to plan, but I can be spontaneous. And I plan by doing. Yeah. Like, I start to do stuff, and then I go, this isn't working, and then I turn, fix it, adjust as I go on. But has there ever been a moment, I'm sure there has, where God just kind of lays the situation in front of you where you've had no time to plan, and actually, or like it completely thwarts your plan? Like, how do you deal with that, and how do you overcome the kind of anxiety that must come with like, I'm not prepared for this?
That's a good question.
It is, yeah. I feel like in my younger years I was confronted with these type of moments regularly, and I completely ignored them. I was like, no, I am a smart kid in a small town. I can achieve anything with enough work, and I did for just years and years. Yeah. Then I think the first one where I was like, okay, I can't do this, and it was really hard, was I went to college and was going to be in the Air Force doing ROTC for their engineering program. And I found out that I had just kind of general anxiety, and was going to have to take medication for that, because I was waking up every hour in the middle of the night to vomit, because that was how it manifested for me.
Oh, wow.
And that just was not something that I was going to be able to like power through and get through that. Yeah. I don't know if it's still like this, but you at the time weren't supposed to take those types of medication. At least in the officer program. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I can't do this, and I need to completely adjust my entire life plan. Yeah. And, in addition to like the root of that being an anxiety disorder, and then, having to rewrite my whole life plan at the age of 19, was, extremely difficult, and, a lot of, I didn't think about it as much as prayer back then. It was, a lot of like thinking through, because again, I was a very arrogant 19-year-old. I could figure out everything on my own, but thinking through all of the options, and like, what were my skills, what was I good at, and what was I going to do, and then finding those areas where it was like more natural that I was excelling in something, And so I shifted to an economics major because I could do that with my eyes closed, and that was then set me off on that path. But yeah, it was the the stopping and like, okay, now I have to survey everything because this thing that I had planned on for years is just not, it's all falling apart. So having to start over from scratch basically, and trying to figure that out. Again, I look back now and it's like, okay, yes, very, very prayerfully, very much God playing a role in my life. But at the time I was still invincible and in control of everything, even in that moment of totally not being in control at all.
Yeah, I know that hindsight. It is amazing when you notice, like, oh, God was there.
Yeah.
Were you still actively, because you said your involvement with, was it 15 you were involved with swim, and then, but also still mentoring, like doing youth work then too, or did that kind of peter off?
As part of me being an extremely arrogant teenager was too good for youth group after a certain period of time, so I was engaging more in adult ministry, and that's how I ended up like volunteering to run parts of VBS and teach Sunday school and things.
So you said it's part of being too arrogant, but yet you're still still involved greatly. Like
but it was like, I'm an adult, so I do things that adults do, not that teenagers do. It totally made sense to 15-year-old Justin.
I still think it's great what you did. Yeah.
So I was involved with the little kids then, and then when I was in school, it was called Wesley Club. It was like the Methodist college program at the church there on the Ave in UW.
That's right. We haven't, people know this about you, I'm sure, but you grew up Methodist.
I grew up Methodist,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Shout out to the other Methodists.
That's right.
Sure. And I know you made those connections here too, I'm sure.
Yes.
There's more than I'm aware, but that's great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you touched a little bit on, Game of Thrones, literature. If we could talk about, passions, things right now. I like how you phrased it, things that pique your interest now. So, what kind of lit are you into? And then, how is it connecting you or disconnecting you from the real world? What are your passions, intersections with faith? What does that look like? Answer all that in 5 seconds.
5 seconds, go. I very much into mainly fantasy now, but like the science fiction, fantasy genre has been my thing for a long time. I did go, touching briefly on my arrogant teenager phase, through a big Russian literature sort of stint.
I'm on a kick right now. We should talk about that.
Okay, yes.
Like, you read a lot of Russian lit?
Yeah.
Okay. You said Russian, right?
Russian, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Dostoevsky was
I'm just getting
my
into
jam.
that now, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Started a little small group.
Yeah, there we go.
That's cool. Okay, good to know.
But more so, sort of more beyond that, has been back to my science fiction and fantasy that I more enjoy reading, just casually.
Yeah.
But that has been sort of a passion of mine, and I think it does come from being kind of a smart kid in a small town who's like, I really identify with this kid who's a wizard in this backcountry area who then goes on to do great things out in the real world with all his hidden talents. So that really, I think, resonated with me and why I enjoy it so much and have for years. But it's really interesting. There's a lot of fantasy writers who are not very Christian focused. I kind of on purpose don't learn a lot about the authors that I like in case they're terrible weirdos who live in New Mexico and are obsessed with food. That's George R. R. Martin.
Is that a true story?
That's the Game of Thrones author.
Okay.
But yeah,
because it's knowledge you can't unlearn.
You can't unlearn it, and a lot of things that I've really enjoyed, like music from the 60s and 70s and things. That was a big atheist period in our history, and there are of course very notable exceptions, and fantasy authors the same way. There's notable exceptions to that, but kind of generally they tend to be a little dismissive of religion, and then I think part of that helps them with creating their worlds. They don't feel like they have to worry about being blasphemous in the religions and things that they create for their worlds. But kind of bringing it back around is with my Christian upbringing and liking to don't like the things I like, but still see where God intersects with them, is like finding things in them that, you know, the author probably didn't consciously intend to draw a parallel with Christianity, but you know, maybe God did, or at least in my situation, reading through it in the way I am,
you can notice
God, you know, pointing that out to me in that.
Yeah, I've always found it fascinating that, like very atheistic or agnostic authors will use overtly Christian themes in their books, like throughout the book or their story, without maybe realizing it. Mm-hmm. Like Lewis and Tolkien are clearly drawing upon their Christian faith, but like this is an easy one, but J.K. Rowling is not a Christian, but Harry Potter clearly is a Christ figure, and maybe she does know that, but like, you know, he has to die in order to defeat death. Spoiler alert. And then he raises again from the dead. Or like Anakin Skywalker is a Christ figure. And I think George Lucas did know that when he created Star Wars. But I just always find that fascinating, that they're like, we don't like this stuff. We don't like the Bible. But it's the greatest story ever told, because it's true, but it's the greatest story ever told, and so they have to use it in some way, otherwise, you know, it just doesn't. I think it will always resonate with people.
Yeah, I guess that's the key, huh? Like, it's too good not to pull on.
Is there a book that you feel like that you've read that like clearly was not trying to be Christian at all, but you were like, oh, there's so many little nuggets here that I can.
What is a good example of that? And again, because I purposely didn't learn a lot about some of the authors, and I think Robert Jordan might have been more in the like Tolkien-y camp of it, because the like Satan figure, his name is Shaitan, which is, you know, very like you sneeze and that's Satan. But that was one. It's the Wheel of Time series. And there's kind of this huge world that has been built up over the course of, I think it's like 14 books. And
oh my goodness!
Again, it is that the main character has to die. And like, but he knows that going in. It's in all the prophecies, and but he's a lot more human figure than like a Christ would be. So he's like always trying to like, okay, is there a way that I can live? Is there, you know, how do I do things? But unlike in the Christian story, where all of the Jews of the day thought that Jesus was going to overthrow the Roman Empire, everybody knows he's going to die. So like he is forging this empire to take on the Dark One. But yet everybody knows he's going to die at the end, so they're all looking beyond that, and how do I make sure that my people survive this apocalyptic battle that's about to happen. And always thought that was just so interesting of a way to like, okay, yes, it's very the what is it, the already won and the not yet thing for Christianity, where it's like, okay, we're going to fight this big battle and win, but we're not there yet. So how do we get there? And how do we balance the you know, very immediate threat of this army of, they're not orcs, but they're basically orcs that are going to come down and fight everyone, but then they're trying to balance, okay, after the wars are done, we got to make sure there are treaties so that our little area is carved out and protected from all of these other people who might take advantage of the fact that we're up here fighting this big battle and are going to basically be wiped out at the end because we've used all our resources trying to get through this. And I've meandered a little bit away from the question you asked, but into like, this was just a super interesting thing that I don't know how much was intentional or not. But it is one that I really think of because that series is kind of a bridge from the Tolkien-y, like the theme of going on the quest, that everything was up through kind of the mid-90s in fantasy, and then into the future of now, where it's more like, okay, we build this world and how all these interconnected politics and things, that is more the modern fantasy, like Game of Thrones.
That's interesting to view it from, there's like a shift. And
Yeah,
it's very, and you see it, like the first 3 books of the Wheel of Time series are very Lord of the Rings-esque, where they're going on, it's every time it's a quest and they're traveling and trying to accomplish
the hero's
something.
Journey is like, you can map it so easily. Yeah.
And then there's a shift at a certain point where the world kind of tips from being like, okay, it's about these 6 kids and the people around them, to it's about this whole world.
And you think that's more the focus of most fantasy at this point right now, is just that, like, individuals kind of against the world, or how would you
it's gone from being very journey based to like a world based. So world building is a huge thing that has always existed. Tolkien made up his own languages and all these things, but the focus of the actual book was this journey that this fellowship was going on, instead of being like, say, about people just in a city planning, a heist of dragon eggs or whatever. Like urban fantasy is a thing now, where it's like you're just in a city, it's a fantasy city with magic and elves and things, but
it's their everyday life.
Yeah, you're there in it instead of going off on the hero's journey, basically, because that's what a lot of them were beforehand. Yeah,
so reading that, I mean, I guess we've only talked about fantasy. You also mentioned you were interested in science fiction too, so you can speak to either one. But in what you read, how does that essentially, or does it transform interactions, or the ways in which you can kind of take what's happening in our world and digest it, sit with it, learn? I mean, because there's an intersection as well with what you read and what you see and experience every day too. And it feels like, I mean, it just feels like it can't be too hard to draw parallels now between what you read and what you experience or hear. So, I mean, what's that like for you? To make sense of the world, I suppose, to simplify the question.
It's one of the things that a lot of people, I think, really like about fantasy is that in many cases there's a sort of a dark and a light, and it's very easy to see where that line is. More modern books get into kind of the gray area and like anti-heroes, but even those, like, everything is more intense than it is in real life. So it's like taking all of these themes that are maybe, drawn from things that are happening in our world, but like ratcheting the stakes up to 20 on a scale of 10, so that it really kind of intensifies and distills down a lot of things to where these characters have to make, choices based on what their, most core principles are, as opposed to like, well, I can save a little bit of money and not buy Starbucks this week and donate it or whatever. Like, that is something that it seems very small, but then if you start reading these stories where everything is about making these huge choices where the stakes are really high, and people having to think about things from the core of what they believe, and that's where it kind of intersection is like, okay, if I were to think like that, and as you read through, like, if I was the hero, what choices would I be making, and how would I do that is kind of where that where I enjoy the, like, yes, it is this fantastical world that is totally different from ours, but if you are thinking about how the things that the characters go through and the things that you think while reading them apply to our world, is one of the things I like a lot about the genre.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through if there's any. Yeah, what's been the shift in our culture that has drawn writers to write fantasy differently? I don't know. I mean, you think about the 20th century, everything was about getting us to the future. And it was quests. How do we get somebody on the moon? How do we create the internet? Like, all the, how do we cure cancer? They haven't done that yet, but how do we do, like, it was all about solving these major problems, or just dreaming and thinking, about how do we get further? How do and maybe the 21st century is like, well, we've done that now. And so now what do we do? How do we do stuff here? I'm trying to think of like what culturally has changed, but maybe that's it.
There's this is way more evident in the sci-fi world, I believe, where I can't remember who made this joke. I'm plagiarizing someone, but it was like everything now about sci-fi or science fiction in general is like rooted in Star Wars in some way, because that was such a huge cultural thing where science fiction exploded into the broadly popular culture. But George Lucas and a lot of the things he set up, like having the Sand Planet and all of these things, was heavily influenced by Dune, which thanks to those movies is now like something that I can say and people know what I'm talking about.
That's true.
Whereas before, like, unless you were really into that Sting adaptation from 1980 whatever.
Or I remember the PC game and I'm like, what was that? Like, Dune.
So heavily influenced by Dune, which was really heavily influenced by Isaac Asimov's Foundation and Empire series that he had. So it's like everything kind of goes back to this like proto sci-fi of the Asimov days in the like 50s and 60s, when it's like, are there aliens on the moon? We don't know. We'll find out. And then it gets to, you know, the hero's journey with the lightsabers and the basically magic with the Force. And then everything since then has kind of been like exploring different themes and like, okay, what if we look at this through this different lens, or, you know, apply this modern sensibility to this thing that was made in the 70s. And that is, I think, it kind of reached a point where it was like, not a pinnacle, because Star Wars is hardly perfect, but like a sort of cultural pinnacle of that. And I think that was kind of, it's happened in a lot of areas. Gangster movies is one where I see it a lot. Like, from The Godfather on, it's like, okay, everything has to go back to The Godfather a little bit. But,
interesting.
Yeah, and there's not like a one exact thing for fantasy that was like that, but I think it was kind of the shift around that time in the like late 90s to early 2000s where it was hitting that peak in other areas, where it was like also fantasy was shifting along with it, even without having the or maybe it was Harry Potter. It could have been Harry Potter that like brought it all out into the open, and it's like, okay, we have wizard kids everywhere. Everybody's waiting for their owl to come when they turn 11. And so then, you know, everybody goes down a rabbit hole of fantasy and has all these new ideas, all these authors who, without that, wouldn't have had that passion and wrote all these books.
Yeah, it's like that little spark that just ignites or opens up a whole new path.
Yeah. Now, what probably some people know, maybe some people don't, is that you work for the books department at Amazon. I don't really want to talk much about your work, but do you find, like, how do you tend to find good new books? Like, is it like they come across, like you're like doing something at work and you're like, oh, that seems interesting, or that looks like a really good book? Do you get suggestions? Because one of the things that I struggle with is reading anything new. Anything that was written in the last 10 years, I can't do.
Because there's so much to read prior.
Well, that and like I don't know, the writing's not the same as like the stuff that was written 200 years ago. But so maybe there's a little bit of arrogance in my like desire to read stuff that's really hard.
You've got your focus.
It's okay. We'll start our Dostoevsky book club and we can talk about it.
That would be great, honestly.
It would be a lot of fun.
I think people would do it.
But yeah. So how do you do that? And then are you ever able to? Because I know for some people this is hard. If you're reading a book that like maybe is not just devoid of Christian narrative, but like is antagonistic towards your faith, are you able to kind of divorce your own personal beliefs and not feel attacked by the book? Like, how do you? That's a lot of questions in one. So first, how do you find new books, and then second, like, what do you do if that happens?
Well, Danny reads like 150 books a year or something, so like there's some crossover of her liking books where I will just be like, oh, we have this in our library because she's read it 3 months ago, I'm gonna read this. But there's also just kind of like I am on the Amazon Books site all day. I I create reports for like what are the top books from the past week or whatever, and things like that, and I will see things, and also I'll just every day is kind of a weird puzzle where I'm trying to solve something different, and so like digging into whatever random thing I'm going down that particular day or week, I will learn something new about books or like data related to books, and like finding I test a lot of things with our own like customer ID from our joint account that Danny and I have, because there's so many different like inputs from reading 150 books. Like it's a lot of data to be like, okay, what happens when customers do this, to like their recommendations and things. But so yeah, there's a lot of just like playing around in the book's adjacent space, where I'll come across things, and also it's gotten a little bit less true as like the time has gone on, and like our team is way bigger than it was 8 years ago when I started. But like most people who work in the books department love books, and so it's like just talking to people like, oh, what book you read? Like there are people who I know, I'm like, okay, that guy is also a sci-fi fantasy guy, and so we'll stop and chat sometimes about what we're reading and what we like that we found recently.
Cool. Yeah, and then I guess I should probably restate the second question, not just for you, but for our hearers. If you are reading a book that is antagonistic towards the Christian faith, and there are those, how do you deal with reading that? Because I would imagine that there are probably plenty of people who are listening that go, like they either can't finish the book, or they leave feeling like just wiped after reading it.
Wiped just for various reasons.
Emotionally, maybe, or like just like, what do I do with like maybe the book raised questions that they weren't aware of. Like how do you when you get to that, what is kind of your centering mechanism while you read?
It I think comes a little bit sort of set naturally to me now, because my favorite book in my like middle school, high school days was Catch-22, which the chaplain figure in that is openly wrestling with his faith, and I don't think Joseph Heller was especially into Christianity, and there's the main character will make disparaging remarks about the God he doesn't believe in, and he gets in a fight with one of his lovers about I don't believe in a God that's just and loving, and he's like, no, I don't believe in a God that's a bumbling idiot, and things like that. And so it's like, from having that be a book that I really enjoyed, and I did first read it when I was struggling with my faith. Granted, it was ironically the coming back to my faith period of my early teens when I first read it, so it didn't bother me maybe as much as it would today if I was to read it for the first time. But having that knowledge that like a story that I love so much can be written by someone who is antagonistic to Christianity, and still find a lot of meaning about the human experience, and that's one of those ones where I feel like when I have reread it as an adult with a stronger faith, I do see little glimpses of little Christian moments in there that I am sure weren't intentional, but do slip in, and having that, that's kind of how I divorce it, is like, I know that there are these books that I absolutely love that are antagonistic towards Christianity, and yet they still contain some fundamental truths, especially the big like literature works like Catch-22, that have resonated with people so much, and have like this sort of deep insight that I, as a Christian, believe came from God, even if Joseph Heller didn't know it at the time.
That's good.
Yeah, those moments of grace. I mean, that's Flannery O'Connor. Intrusions of grace, they can just happen anywhere, even not being intended by the author themselves. So it's cool as the reader, you can notice that and enjoy the story either way, because it's fascinating. Yeah. I think that's also, it's interesting that you don't always read about the authors. That's probably pretty wise, because it can definitely, especially in a cancel culture, I mean, without getting fully into that, unless that's where you guys wanted to go. But it's like, yeah, to just focus on the work that's there and read that. And then if you want to read up later. But I like that method.
Yeah, and it really did stem from my love of different musicians who were, atheists and drug users and, all kinds of terrible things, probably. But, like, I still enjoy, Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones, their music. Even if, they're, at least some of them were and are terrible people, because apparently the Rolling Stones are never going to die. I don't know how old they are now, but still going strong.
Well, they just performed recently, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's wild.
But yeah, that was kind of like, I was to sort of drive home how uncool I was, describe myself as being a square.
Sort of drive it.
Yeah.
That's what we've been arcing towards.
Yeah. It's like,
that is not true.
I'm a square, and was very much, very straight-laced kid, didn't do anything. It was always humorous when my parents would go out of town, like, oh, don't have a party. I'm like, okay, all right, yeah. I won't have my friends over to play ping pong and watch Lord of the Rings again. Like,
yeah.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah. But because of that, and so it was like, it probably just made me uncomfortable to be like, oh yeah, I had all these, crazy drug and sex parties. I was like, I don't want to know about that, but I still like your music, so I'm not going to learn about you as a person. You created these audio files, and now I enjoy them.
Yeah. Well, and there's something, like, and you said this about the books, there's something that is innately beautiful about a lot of this music, and just, like, can touch the soul in a different way. And even though they are probably we know for a fact that a lot of them are not doing it for the purpose of glorifying God. They certainly are, because God has given them the capacity to do what they do. The only reason they can make music that way is because they were made in His image, and God decided to give them a little bit more of the creative gift than He gave me. Like, you can listen to Ray Charles and go, like, and even Elvis at times, who has some Christian motifs in a lot of his music. That they did some things that were not great, but that music is beautiful.
Yeah.
And boy, don't get us started when we only see the Christian music. It's like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Some of the time.
Yeah.
That's okay. We don't need to have a Christian music party.
No, yeah. No, with Skillet's good.
Oh, yes.
Third Day.
I remember when I went, I don't know what group I was in. I was probably, approaching maybe arrogant teenage years, but also like new Christian years. And I was like talking with friends, and I was like, oh, I went to a mosh pit. And they were like, you were in a mosh pit? I was like, yeah, it's when Creation Fest was at the Gorge. And they're like, oh, that's not a mosh pit. I'm like, oh, of course it's not a mosh pit. But, because Skillet, you get out and, you're not crowd surfing, but it's just fun. Like,
Yeah.
No, Skillet's a good band.
Yeah. They were like, them and Third Day were the two Christian bands that I was first introduced to when I became a Christian. And I thought that that's what Christian music was. And I was like, this is, not my style. I'll listen to it in the gym, and that's about it. And then people started showing me, like, people like Lauren Daigle and, Hillsong, and now I'm Shane and Shane and is really and City of Light are the two that I love the most. But like, Christian music can be really, really
But it can also
beautiful.
be mosh pit Christian music.
Right, yeah.
Like Red. Did you listen to Red? Oh, no. I do listen to other music, to people listening. Yeah. Still rocking out to Red in the car.
Nice, yes.
That's fascinating, Justin. Yeah, I like listening to that whole arc of, moving from the hero's journey to also, like, what is the... I guess it's like, what are we grappling with in our world? That's what literature does, right?
Yeah.
And film. So, and you're staying up on that. 14 books in a series, that still blows my mind. And I know that other series are far longer, I'm sure. And, like, the endurance to read that and then also to be writing that, it's amazing. Yeah.
Do you have any plans do you want to write a book ever?
Oh, yeah, you.
And to our listeners, please don't look it up on Amazon, have written a a book series.
Okay. You just gave them permission to look it up, Justin.
I know, I did.
Saying that. Oh, no.
I mean, no, it's not there.
It's not there.
But it was something that I had written and like started writing in a like very grief-heavy period of my life. So it is much more about me processing that grief as opposed to like being a good story or well written or anything. But it was kind of a goal of mine, sort of after the fact, and after I had met Danny, to like finish writing the trilogy and then just put it up as an ebook. That it's like, okay, I've done it. I did it. I wrote the trilogy.
Nice.
So yeah, I've written some. I had written in college like some books that are, you know, enough words to be a book. I did not publish those ones though.
But it helped you work through.
It did, yes.
This process.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, they're very much. I think it would be more interesting to write a book about Griffin reading those books and me explaining some of the things about them, because it is very much each of the main characters is me from a certain part of my life, and then but like all at that time in my life dealing with that grief I was going through, but yet set in a fantasy setting with magic and werewolves and things.
Yeah.
So again, not great writing, but
it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm sure it's great, but also the fact that you were able to work through something while doing that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. That's cool.
But you'll let Griffin read it one day.
Maybe. I don't know.
If he looks it up. Yeah.
But it was just the idea, I don't know when this came to me, probably in the middle of the night, trying to get him to go to sleep at some point, of like, okay, if Griffin ever found that and is reading it, and it's like, okay, like an interview of my child reading this thing that is about me going through grief and knowing that each character is representative of like a different stage in my life.
Do some annotations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that premise.
Yeah, that's cool.
Creative.
Well, should we?
Yeah, I feel like, gosh, I want to ask more about that book, but maybe we'll have you back, Justin. Maybe we'll have you back. Yeah, part 2 of 14.
Yes.
We'll 14's in my head, so no.
But yeah, so I mean, obviously, people know you at the church well enough. But if during our time in the Narthex, this is a question we've been asking everybody, if they wanted to come up and maybe like sort of like a intentional conversation with you, what might be a good way to start that conversation? What would you like to talk about on a Sunday morning?
Yeah, one of the things that I really admire about kids is I can ask a kid like, what's your thing? And they will just launch into, you know, Pokemon or whatever it is that they're into, and that just turns into like what kind of a person that kid is, and it lets them really share something that they love to talk about, and like sharing with people what their thing is or what their story is, if they think about it in that way, is something that I don't wear my graphic tees to church, but I guess I wear my funny polos and things, so there's a little bit, but like, I don't know, that openness for people to share, you know, what their thing is. Like, is it gardening? Is it whales? I realize I just described the Sweeneys unintentionally, but like, you know, those things, and it's like, that is I think a great way that adults kind of guard themselves off a little bit, and like, I don't want to share I don't want to share that I've read Game of Thrones 4 times or something like that. Because, you know, what if they judge me? But like, that kind of a thing in the Narthex is like, oh, let's talk about what your thing is and how you see God in that.
I like that. Gosh, speaking of kids, I hope they can hear them. They're having a blast, whoever is out there right now. That's a great question. What's your thing? Well, thanks for sharing all the things. It's really great. And, well, this has been Justin.